This computer, okay, awesome.
I
Hi,
can see
and
the red button.
we are here with another episode of the Pioneer Conversation. This time we have Vijay Sappani, the founder of ELA Capital, which is one of the largest cannabis holding companies in the world. Of course, cannabis is in the news for both the right and wrong reasons in India. Wrong reasons, of course, you're seeing in Mumbai. And the right reasons is because India just recently voted to, in a UN vote, which is, of course, non-binding, on either India or any of the other countries, on the decriminalization of marijuana and marijuana products. And there have been some interesting white papers, including one by the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, which has argued for the decriminalization of marijuana. Um, my views on this have been known for a while, which is that, this plant, the cannabis plant, has of course, is part of India's botanical heritage, and India should take advantage of the increasing legalization of marijuana. Several more, of course, Vijay operates out of Canada. Canada is now a fully legal market, and across the border in the United States, more and more states have just decriminalized marijuana consumption and possession, not in the deep south, obviously. And recently, Oregon actually decriminalized even possession of stronger psychotropic substances. There is, of course, a movement towards this. Um, Thanks, Vijay, for joining us. You know, um, Give us a bit more about your company, what you're doing. You're one of the largest listed cannabis firms in the world. What sort of products? Tell us more, and then we'll carry on.
Thanks, Kushan, for having me. The first company I founded, TerraAscend, was one of the earlier players in the medical cannabis space in Canada. We're now a 2 billion plus company. Ever since we've founded and launched companies in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, and pretty much most of the global markets. And as somebody who was born and raised in India, it really aches that cannabis is still technically not legal in India. And considering, I always joke about this, saying I studied in India, I went to Kendriya Vidyalaya, yoga was a part of my school curriculum, and we would find every single excuse to not attend the yoga class. Oh, I've got, hand pain, stomach pain, whatnot. And then you go to Canada and US, you pay big bucks in dollars to get yoga classes.
Yep.
When I meet my high school friends, we laugh about it. That's something similar, we talk about today about cannabis. I mean, stuff like, Ayurveda, stuff like yoga, all this originated in India, and then has become so-called fashionable in the West and done really well. Now, Ayurveda and cannabis, for example, has long history in India. In the West, adaptogens, which is ashwagandha and brahmi and curcumin, which is nothing but turmeric, is become. It's funny when you have Westerners teaching you the value of curcumin, and then I have to tell them, it's been used in India for thousands of years. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. That's a very sad part. When people tell me that neem is a fantastic use for anti-parasites and insecticides, you laugh about it when we have known this in India for a long time. We've got a lot of knowledge. We don't really market it well. And that's something, I feel about cannabis. Cannabis has a long history in India for medical and other purposes. And India should be leading the global world in the change. Sadly, India is now a laggard in this case. Canada and most of US, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, many countries around the world have actually legalized medical, but also adult use recreational cannabis. Now, also there is cannabis, which has been legalized by FDA as pharmaceutical drug. There's quite a few cannabis products through clinical research that has been approved. So hopefully we'll see that reverse in India once a world leader in Ayurveda, in cannabis. We're hoping that India will turn around and come back to its historical roots.
All right, so we can come back to our historical roots with regards to cannabis, but um, many countries have decriminalized, of course, medical marijuana usage. Um, um, we've known for a long time that, of course, marijuana, either of the active ingredients in marijuana, which is THC or CBD, both help in pain relief, appetite creation, with cancer patients. Um, should India and other countries in the world, even if they, let's not rush into recreational legalization, but should we definitely look at a medical legalization for medical usage, given that, you know, because of cancer care, because of all those aspects of cancer and other diseases where marijuana can be helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, look, let's go based on facts and data, not based on what people say and people wish. Um, Cannabis has been pharmaceutically approved. Marinol, which was available once in India for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, which is primarily in terms of chemotherapy and cancer. Cannabis is now widely used for pain. Cannabis is GW Pharmaceuticals as a drug approved for use in a form of pediatric epilepsy. I think that is what is starting to happen. Be that in Canada, US, UK, Australia, many parts of the world. India needs to follow that. I think you're right. It might be too early to kind of bring recreational adult use in a country of 1.3 billion people. Now, data shows very clearly in Canada, with medical legalization and adult use legalization, it has not led to increase so-called addiction, increased use of cannabis. In fact, with legalization of medical cannabis, we have seen up to 50% drop in overdose death from opioids. Opioids is a major cause of deaths in the Western world and in India too. Abuse from pharmaceutical drugs is significantly increasing in India, and we have seen that in countries where it has been legalized, it's been dropping. So in a country like India, where it has got historical knowledge, but also some barriers, I think legalizing medical use of cannabis through structured hospitals and for religious and cultural purposes should be done. It's long overdue. I believe led by Tata Institute of Fundamental Sciences and many other hospitals have been talking about the use of cannabis for oncology, which is cancer and other things. So I think the right thing for India to do is legalize cannabis for medical purposes, have it done through hospitals to start with, and then slowly open it up to clinic level services, because there's always concern of misuse in the community. So it might be the right thing to do is get started immediately to use it from the hospital structure.
Vijay, I'm sure you are aware there are several companies in India that are now producing CBD-based products, as well as THC-based products in the garb of Ayurvedic products. Of course, this is still a very, how do I put this? It's a sort of legal gray area over here. Do you think regulation is in a way good for the industry over here in regards to marijuana, and what has the Canadian experience with regulation been?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, whether it's marijuana, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, and some of the concerns in the Western world, teenage pregnancy, teenage issues, we always say educate, regulate, and legalize. The more you try to push things underground, the more harder it is to educate and regulate. India has those success. If you look at sex education in India with sex workers, um, by actually not pushing them underground, but by engaging and educating them, that's how the HIV menace in India was brought under control. So I think the biggest thing is India has proven track record in working in ground level. What India really needs to do is learn from its own experience, but also learn from data from Western countries that India needs to legalize for medical purposes for two reasons. One, it works in many cases where other pharmaceutical drugs don't work. Two, the low cost and access to cannabis. Cannabis is a plant. It's a natural plant. It's called weed because it grows everywhere. And by legalizing it for medical purpose, you're going to now get access to a lot of people who potentially cannot, especially in the poorer strata, who cannot afford pharmaceutical drugs. Um, and I think bringing it from under a medical structure what we have seen in the Western world is that most of the people who are actually moved to cannabis are not people who have ever used cannabis before. The perception that these are ganja users, addicts. No, most of them are seniors who have pain, who have other kinds of issues like sleep, mental health challenges. They have tried pharmaceutical drugs. They've seen the side effects. They wanted to move. Data shows that more than 60% of the first-time cannabis users have never actually used it before in their life.
So 60% of the cannabis users in cancer care have not used it before in their lives.
That's right. So there's a good number of them have never tried it before in the younger age and stuff. And it's also showing that a lot of them who come into cannabis will either say, like, probably 25% will say, this is fabulous. I'm going to stop all my opioids and my pharmaceutical drugs. There are some who will say, it's helpful, but I'm going to do a combination of my Advil and paracetamol along with this. Most of them, are using heavier dose of opioid drug, which is very, very addictive pharmaceutical drugs. There will be those who say, you know what, it is there, but I'd rather stay on my pharmaceutical drugs. And then you're going to have 1/4 of them say it's not working for me. Cannabis is not, marijuana is not a magic pill. It is not going to cure anything and everything. But the reality is that it has a place in medicine. That's the most important thing. When I think right now a lot of patients in India are using it, but they're sadly procuring it illegally. Um, you've seen that, even in the Bollywood whole thing. They were taking CBD. CBD does not even create those hallucinations and stuff. CBD is more like a pain relief oil. I mean, I remember if I go for a PT class and come back home, my grandmother will put neem oil on my legs to massage it down. That's something like CBD oil. So there's a lot of misconceptions. Sadly, in a country like India, where you're supposed to have all the knowledge, a lot of myth and misconceptions that have come in the past generation that needs to be reversed. But um, just with historical data in India, but also with what we have seen in the Western world, cannabis is great for pain, for cancer patients, for sleep. Those are the top three conditions you could be using. Cannabis has been approved as a pharmaceutical drug in many countries for pediatric epilepsy. People with epilepsy, when most pharmaceutical drugs don't work, that's what cannabis has done. Dr. Sanjay Gupta's world famous CNN program on Charlotte's Web was started there. The young girl Charlotte, nothing helped her, and cannabis was the only product that helped her. And now we know tens of thousands of children around the world use cannabis when no other medication has helped them in epilepsy.
That's remarkable. So can you give me, with your companies, how do you make the product? I mean, do you grow the plant and you process the plant, and that is then and how do you with regards to cannabis, of course, the question people have is how do you manage consistency with regards to the products you sent out?
Absolutely. I think in different companies in different countries, the process is a little bit different. But in a full-fledged, let's say Western part, you would even start with the seed, the clone, then grow the plant. Once the mother plant is there, you're cloning and growing the plant. There's many ways to grow in an indoor, in a greenhouse, in outdoor. Indoor is more controlled. You can control the temperature, light, everything. And then the two major components, cannabis has got a lot, but let's talk about the two major components, which is THC and CBD. For a lack of a better word, THC is the one which creates the hallucination. CBD doesn't create it. Both of them have, features that help in pain, sleep, nausea, all those things. Um, in Canada, for most part of the world, cannabis is sold as a flower, just as a bud, that people will take it, crush it, smoke it, use it in the food however they want. Somebody with a migraine wants instant relief. Somebody with back pain or cancer pain will usually tend to smoke it. You can also vaporize it, put it into a vaporizer and take it. Oils are the most widely used form of medical use. Tinctures and oils are made from the flower and other parts. And then now there's also creams, capsules, gummies and beverages, and all those things have come into play now. So it depends on different markets where they have legalized different form factors, but most widely used is the smokable form and the oil form.
Of course, that is, of course, the traditional forms of cannabis, of course. But now with edibles, we are seeing a massive rise in the U.S. consumption. I was in both Washington State as well as in Nevada, in Las Vegas, earlier this year, when one could still travel. And we went to a couple of legal shops. It's become a massive industry in the U.S. I mean, you had big tobacco, you had big alcohol, and now you have big weed. Is that also a reason India should think? Because we'd be far behind the game, and big Western companies such as yours would be leading, far ahead of anything India can do.
Well, I think the most important thing you've realized, people have realized, and this is why, even in a so-called conservative place like US, state after state has been voted by the citizens to legalize it. The question now comes in is, why are so-called conservative Republican states in the US legalizing cannabis? You've got Texas now, Florida, many states are coming in. I think people are seeing the results of it. Um, alcohol and tobacco are among the top three killers in the world. You can overdose on alcohol, you can overdose on tobacco, you can overdose literally on marijuana. When somebody is over drunk, they get violent. When somebody is high on cannabis, they go to sleep. That's the reality people have
Or they
started to see.
or they eat a lot and then go to sleep.
They eat a lot, yeah. And I think, and data is starting to come out, and from Canada, US, and Europe, to see that legalization has not led to some of this foo-foo people have created about, drug addicts and that and this. In fact, it's created the opposite. People are moving away from alcohol. People are, becoming less violent, if you want to call it in that way. There was once this myth about, cannabis, drug driving, and will be lead to a lot of accidents. Actually, accident rates have dropped, not increased in Canada. So teen use of illegal substances have gone down, not gone up. So I think data is showing in US and Canada and Western countries, by legalizing cannabis, what it leads to improved taxation structure, better education, better control, but most importantly, better health outputs are coming in because you're cutting down on other things like alcohol and other illegal things. Also, even in India, people are still consuming cannabis. In US and Canada, people have been consuming cannabis. You have no idea where that product is coming from. This is like, you're getting this bootleg, arak, illegal liquor in India. When you legalize and regulate, you can at least regulate the quality of it. People are able to get qualitative substance. That is the most important change that you have seen in US and Canada. In terms of India, again, by legalizing it for medical purposes, by bringing it in a structured way through hospitals, bringing in the medical benefits to patients, that's a great place to start. Seeing the benefits of that, maybe India could also consider an adult recreation use in certain tourist spots like Goa. Legalize in certain place to start, see how it goes, and then slowly start bringing it to other markets. There's always going to be concerns. It was not that Canada or US has not had concerns. There will always be those concerns. Or maybe India could completely legalize CBD, because CBD doesn't get you high. You can have as much CBD as you want, it doesn't get you high. So there are many ways to do it. And it seems there is political will. There have been politicians in all spectrum in India talking about the need to legalize, cannabis in some form or other. I think the time is coming now.
Okay, one more thing. How did a kid from a KV manage to create a $2 billion enterprise?
It's funny. I mean, I'm a pharmacist by education. I did my pharmacy, spent most of my life in big pharma. And one thing led to another thing. I worked health minister there back in the day. Got into a consulting gig on this new narcotic, and I was joking with a friend, that we should get into this. Not a consumer heavily, do occasionally consume cannabis when in Canada. And we bringing our pharmaceutical expertise was something that Health Canada loved, because we understand regulation, we understand pharmaceutical guidelines, and one thing led to another thing. But I don't think anybody expected cannabis to become such a big play in that part of the world. Also, a lot of the players saw cannabis as a farmer agricultural play. We are pharmaceutical guys. We said we're not farmers, we're pharmaceutical players. We looked at how do we create capsules and dosage forms and not just cultivation. So we were a differentiator in the market, which really proved to be well for us. And you're seeing a lot more companies now coming in that are not just about the old school belief that people who are cannabis users are those the so-called druggies. They have realized that there's a lot of seniors, a lot of average people wanting to use it people come back tired from work, they just want to relax. Some people like to have a glass of wine, some people like to have a coffee, some people like to have a CBD pill, CBD oil, CBD in your food. It's becoming common. So just to serve the needs, different companies are coming with different products. We're adapting with the market. Our first company, we're very focused on cultivation and pharmaceutical products. Now we have started realizing the consumer is smart. They want different dosage forms. They want gummies. They want beverages. They want products that will be mixed with their food substances. Now, the newer things we're doing is cannabis with ashwagandha, cannabis with brahmi. It's called adaptogens. Is becoming a big thing in Europe and Canada and US. But looking at use of cannabis with Ayurveda, which is called as adaptogens in those part of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Just one more thing. While you are a pharmacist by training, but cannabis, of course, the plant itself has been on the cutting edge of agricultural technology. I mean, few other plants. I mean, even though many in the anti-GMO movement might be considered to be potheads, the cannabis plant has been the most GM'd plant, whether naturally or in the lab. And a lot of the stuff we do in hydroponics nowadays started with cannabis. It started with so many others. So there are also opportunities in agricultural technology from cannabis cultivation. Would you see that as well? Would you say that India could also?
Absolutely. I mean, hemp, there's a reason why cannabis is called weed. It'll grow anywhere. If you go to the northern part of India, you will see it growing everywhere. Hemp is a fabulous plant. It grows fast. It takes less water, very sustainable. I think with the whole climate change, sustainability coming in, a lot of them are moving towards hemp-based products now, and which is great for Indian farmers. I think India has an issue with water. Trying to move towards hemp cultivation, there's quite a few things. Cannabis is one of those plants where every single part of the plant can be used for something or the other. Whether it's used as medical, whether it could be used for creating of clothes, bags and whatnot. It's very widely used now. So from an agricultural perspective, uh, from a farmer's perspective, quick growing crop with low maintenance and a cash crop where you get way better money return than most of the crops you grow today. Very sustainable, green, unlike rice and some of these things. It is less punishing on the environment, but also requires very little maintenance. Doesn't attract too much of pests. Doesn't attract too much of other issues that traditionally farmers tend to face. So from that perspective, I think hemp and cannabis are fabulous from a farming perspective. And to your point, absolutely, cannabis, because it was illegal, people are getting smarter and making it, growing it underground, and figured out how do you grow it underground by doing genetically modified. But India has that one of the advantage of having 5,000 and thousands of years of cultivation history. In India also, if you see in the Himalayas, cultivation has been growing higher and higher just because police have been raiding. So because it's been going to higher elevation, the plant itself has been adapting to itself. You've created various forms. The most expensive hash sold in Amsterdam is called Malana cream. You can guess where it's coming from. The most expensive hash in Europe is from Malana. And sadly, this product, you can't legally get it in India. And it just tells that we have some amazing product in India. If we could legalize it, regulate it from the farmer to the supply chain to the medical use patients and potentially down the line exports. India is called the pharmacy of the world. So think about this now. Our traditional knowledge, our geography, a significant pool of farmers, and our pharmaceutical expertise, we're creating a complete ecosystem where right from, whether it's grown in southern Teni and Tamil Nadu or grown in the Himalayas, cannabis and hemp will grow anywhere in India. You're creating now millions of jobs of good agricultural product. You've got a pharmaceutical industry that is proven worldwide. You can grow your plant, extract, make pharmaceutical products in India, and export from India. A full ecosystem can be created, not just for the domestic, but for global market.
Vijay, before we close, one question. So in case India does go down the path of legalization, would you look, or your company look at investing into India?
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things we are very actively pursuing, including within the Ayush guidelines. How do we get into the Indian market to, come here and profit from it, but also, my bonds to this land is way beyond than what I would have with a Malta, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, where we operate. It's not just business, it's spiritual, it's historical. I can't change it. And that's been big on my agenda is, how can we legalize cannabis in India? How can we create a structure of education in India for cannabis, not just with the future generations, but generations like my parents who actually need it. That's a generation who can benefit a lot from it. So absolutely, we are very committed. Committed not just in investing ourselves, but also bringing in some of the other bigger companies in Canada and US to come and invest in India. I can tell you that if India moves towards legalization, you're looking at billions of dollars of investment coming into India through my companies and many other companies that we know, because India itself is a huge market for global markets.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Vijay. Really appreciate it. Hope to catch up with you next time you're in Delhi. Vijay joined us from Chennai, where his family is. So thank you, Vijay. And I hope you had a good journey in from Canada. And hope to speak to you soon. I'll stop the
Thanks, Kushan.
I'll stop the recording here, but we'll